chalk dust hangs over the Montreal Forum like pale smoke. The uneven bars gleam under hot lights. A girl in white waits, breathing through the roar. Nadia Comăneci steps forward, 14 years old, small enough to vanish beside the apparatus, precise enough to make the room feel suddenly unsteady. Then she flies, kip, cast, release, catch, no wasted motion, no visible doubt. When she lands, the crowd knows something has happened. On July 18, 1976, Comaneci became the first Olympic gymnast awarded a perfect 10, beginning with her uneven bars routine. That blink mattered because the machine had not been built for perfection. The scoreboard could count excellence. It could not imagine the absolute. Britannica records that the scoreboard first showed 1.00, a technical glitch caused by a system unprepared to display 10.0. But Montreal was never only Nadia's story. Outside that arena, another performance was unfolding, built from concrete, politics, debt, and national ambition. The Montreal Games opened on July 17, 1976, promising a grand Canadian stage for athletes, television, and Cold War prestige. The host city wanted elegance without embarrassment. Mayor Jean Drapeau promised confidence so complete it sounded less like budgeting than prophecy. Drapeau famously said the Montreal Olympics could no more have a deficit than a man could have a baby. It was a perfect line for an age that believed spectacle could pay for itself, if only the world looked closely enough. Instead, Montreal's Olympic costs rose from an original estimate of $124 million to roughly $0.5 billion. Two ledgers were being written, one in applause, one in interest payments, and for a few minutes Nadia made everyone forget the second. Comaneci was 14 when she made her Olympic debut in Montreal, representing Romania under the full glare of international expectation. She came from a country where sport was never just sport. Every medal could become proof, propaganda, leverage, or escape. Listen closely, because the miracle was not that she floated. It was that she floated inside a machine built to measure her. Her first perfect score came on the uneven bars, the apparatus where rhythm and wrist meet in fractions of a second. The bars demanded trust. Let go too soon, and gravity took over. Hold too long, and the whole routine came apart. When the judges entered the perfect mark, the equipment displayed the impossible as 1.00, confusing spectators before the truth spread. For a breath, perfection looked like a mistake. Then the arena understood, and the sound rose like weather. That score was the first perfect 10 in Olympic gymnastics history, and it changed how the sport imagined its own ceiling. A perfect 10 had existed as an idea, a horizon. Nadia did not reach it so much as make it visible. By the end of Montreal, Comaneci had earned 7 perfect scores and 5 medals, including 3 golds. Montreal had found its image, a teenage gymnast, utterly composed, doing what the scoreboard designers had never planned to see. Softly, but icons are heavy things to hand to children, especially when nations are waiting to wear them as proof. The 1976 Olympics also faced a boycott by more than 20 African nations after a dispute over apartheid-era sport. The missing teams left silence in places built for noise. Lanes stayed empty, rooms stayed prepared. Politics had crossed the starting line first. The dispute centered on New Zealand, whose rugby ties with apartheid South Africa drew demands for Olympic exclusion. So while Nadia spun through the air, other athletes never got their Montreal moment. Absence became part of the game's architecture. CBC later called Montreal one of the costliest games, shaped by construction overruns, political strain, and an unfinished sense of triumph. The Cold War loved athletes because bodies could say what diplomats could not: strength, discipline, superiority, destiny. Comaneci's Montreal medals included gold in the all-around, uneven bars, and balance beam competitions. To Western viewers, she looked almost unreal. To Romanians, she was flesh and symbol at once, a child carrying adult meanings. To Romanian officials, every salute and landing could serve a story about national discipline, even when the athlete herself was just breathing. At Montreal, Comaneci won 5 medals total, 3 gold, 1 silver, and 1 bronze. What cameras loved was grace. What they rarely held long enough was pressure. Coaches, systems, officials, and the impossible appetite for victory. When you revisit a famous sports moment, consider asking 3 questions: who performed, who paid, and who was kept outside the frame. Montreal's games also sat under wider shadows: boycott politics, Cold War pressure, and growing suspicion around performance enhancement in elite sport. That does not diminish Nadia's brilliance. It places it where brilliance actually lives, among institutions, incentives, fears, and fragile human bodies. The scoreboard failed because it had a limit. The city failed because it believed limits could be talked away. Montreal's Olympic Stadium became famous not just for its shape, but for the debt attached to it. For Montrealers, the games did not end with extinguished flame. They lingered in taxes, headlines, jokes, repairs, and civic argument. Quebec officials confirmed the final payment on the Olympic debt in 2006, 3 decades after the Games. Imagine celebrating a 2-week festival, then paying for it through births, graduations, retirements, and entire careers. Montreal's 50th anniversary commemorations are planned for 2026, with Comaneci expected to return to the city. Anniversaries make cities choose. Do they polish the metal or turn it over and read the scratches? One approach is to watch Olympic nostalgia with double vision, celebrate achievement, while considering the public costs and political bargains beneath it. The cost jump from $124 million to about $1.5 billion became central to Montreal's Olympic legacy. A city can win the world's attention and still wonder, years later, whether attention was worth the bill. Nadia's body moved like punctuation, sharp where it needed force, soft where it needed air, final when it needed silence. Breath, and she was still a child, standing at the center of adult hunger for certainty, victory, and proof. Comaneci later defected from Romania in 1989, a reminder that Olympic symbols often carry lives more complicated than broadcasts allow. That later life should make us careful. The girl on the podium was not just an emblem, she was becoming someone. Her Montreal golds came in the all-around balance beam and uneven bars, with silver in team competition and bronze on floor. The numbers sound tidy. The lived experience was not. Every medal passed through muscle pain, repetition, discipline, and a world watching. If you're weighing modern mega events, consider asking who owns the glory, who carries the overruns, and what safeguards may help taxpayers. More than 20 African nations stayed away from Montreal, making the boycott one of the defining political facts of the Games. For athletes from those countries, principle came with cost. Training cycles vanished. Olympic dreams narrowed into protest. The IOC refused to exclude New Zealand, despite pressure tied to New Zealand rugby's contact with apartheid South Africa. Here, sport did not transcend politics, it revealed them, cleanly and painfully, right where the world had gathered to pretend otherwise. That is why Montreal still feels alive. It gave us perfection, protest, and a warning poured in concrete. The stadium debt became so notorious that CBC's coverage echoed the local nickname, the Big O. A joke can carry a grievance. Montreal laughed because the alternative was admitting how long the bill would stay. Before praising any host city, consider looking for the afterlife, maintenance, debt, displacement, and whether promised benefits actually reached residents. Comaneci's planned return for Montreal's 50th anniversary shows how powerfully that first perfect score still resonates. She returns not to the same city, and not as the same girl. Memory changes both the stage and the performer. Britannica identifies Comaneci as the first gymnast to receive a perfect score in an Olympic event. That matters because records do more than rank people. They teach the next generation what the human body might attempt. For today's host city debates, one practical approach may help: separate the emotional value of spectacle from the financial plan behind it. And for listeners, Montreal asks us to hold 2 truths without dropping either. The beauty was real. The cost was real. If stories like this help you hear the past differently, a like or subscribe is warmly appreciated. It keeps the archive doors open. The Montreal Forum heard a crowd roar at a number the machine could not show. Outside, the city was already becoming a bill. Perfection lasted seconds. Montreal paid for spectacle for decades. Between those truths stands Nadia Comăneci, landing cleanly while history kept moving.